Welcome to Creekside Chats with successful multifamily real estate investors. Dr. Allen chats with successful investors exploring their journey from setback to triumph. Through this window, we glimpse the truths that inspire our guests to invest abundantly and flourish in all areas of life. And now your host, Dr. Allen.
Hello, and welcome to Creekside Chats with successful multifamily real estate investors, where we delve deep into the lives of our successful guests to find the secrets of thriving to flourish abundantly in all areas of life. I'm your host, Dr. Allen. Today's guest is the founder of Done in a Day, a home transition and move management company that has helped more than 2,000 families prepare their houses to sell for top dollar and avoid the chaos and stress of moving. She is the author of Smart Moves, How to Save Time and Money While Transitioning Your Home and Life. Empty, Evaluate, Execute is her declutter method, and it aims to bring her clients top dollar for their largest financial asset. She has been featured in the Washington Post, Washington Times, HGTV, the Wall Street Journal, and many other media outlets. Welcome to the show, Caroline Carter.
Oh, thank you, Alan. It's an honor. I'm really excited for our talk today.
And I am looking forward to really getting to know the person behind this phenomenal success. Oftentimes, an easy way to get into this is actually to look back at your childhood. So if you can think of a particular childhood memory that in some way, shape, or form actually led to being the woman that you are today.
Well, I think I'd probably start from the time that I was about 8 years old, and I loved babies, which was not uncommon for a lot of, young girls, and started babysitting as a mother's helper at 8 years old for 50 cents an hour. And just really loved it. I loved working. I loved the responsibility. I took it so seriously. And I reached out to another neighbor, and for 4 years, from 8 to 12, I babysat for 50 cents an hour, and for another family for 75 cents an hour. And I used to write down on my little calendar how much I made, whether it was $1.50 or $2.50. And by the time I was 12 years old, I had $400 in the bank, which was a lot of money, certainly for me at that time. And it showed me the importance of being able to track, save. It also showed me how responsible I could be for someone other than myself, that I could be trusted. It was a very good lesson for me in life. I'm still a very organized person, but I think back on when I first made money and realized what it allowed me to do. So for other times in my life when I haven't had money, I think, boy, I can remember that feeling of being, 8, 9, 10, 11, and knowing that regardless of what was happening in my life, I could recreate myself, if you will, even in the most basic sense, to make money. So it's a memory that I have that I often refer to, in my own private time, as one that I'm glad I did have.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's an interesting experience. So how did that experience, what was the road from there to actually becoming a successful businesswoman? What were some of the steps in between the babysitting and where you are today? Well,
that's a great question. I moved around a lot after college. I grew up the third child in an upper middle class home. I wasn't expected really to do anything. I had two brothers that were expected to, go into the financial industry after my father. My mother was an artist and a homemaker and also a college professor. But she did that a little bit later in life. So I was raised in a very traditional format in which, as a girl, as a young woman, I was expected to make a good match, go out and work after college. And then when I meet my husband, to settle down and have a family. Mm-hmm. So while I worked all the way through high school, I worked because I wanted to, not because I had to. I was a waitress throughout high school and college. And after college, it was the 80s, so Wall Street was a pretty sexy place to be, and where my brothers were. And I thought, geez, I graduated with a degree in psychology and French. Now what? It didn't really prepare me for much on the open market, but I thought, well, this sounds great. So I lived in Hoboken, New Jersey, and went and worked on Wall Street for a couple of years. And that was great until I decided that, there might be something else for me to do before I kind of look around to settle down. I was only 22 or 23, and I thought, where could I go that I've always really wanted to go? Where could I go? And I thought, I'm going to move to Boston. And I moved to Boston, didn't know anybody, and I got a job in a deli, and I got a job on a painting crew, painting houses, believe it or not.
Wow.
And made some friends, and ended up getting a job in a bank where I stayed for 3 or 4 years. Then I signed on with Berlitz, the language training company, and I moved with them 3 or 4 times down to North Carolina and Chicago for several years, and Washington, D.C. and Connecticut. So I moved a lot. And then ultimately I did meet he's my ex-husband now, but I did meet him when I was 31. And I felt at that point as if I really had proved I can live on my own, pay my own bills. I'm very focused. I'm industrious. I'm an all-around, good person. I have a good history or track record I can talk about now. And now it's time to get married. And I did. And like most people getting married, I thought at 31, he was the love of my life. In any event, we were married for 12 years. I stopped working. We were married for 12 years, and I had 3 beautiful children. And after 12 years, we decided to part ways. I think what we both wanted out of the marriage was a little bit different. And again, I had to make a decision which was life-altering, not only for me, but for my 3 children. And I went from living, in an almost $2 million house with, nothing more on my plate than shopping. And, I had a nanny for the kids. And I gave all that up to live a more authentic life myself, to live a life based on truth, not on what others saw, but the way I needed to live, the way I wanted to raise my children. I'm not I don't really care. I don't focus on what other people think or say about me. I focus on my truth, being a good person. But boy, I had no idea what I was getting into, not financially, not emotionally. It was a huge decision that, I can finally say it was for the best. And when I asked myself over the years, God, why didn't I just stay? I knew that wasn't an option for me. It wasn't an option for me to stay and still be who I am or who I needed to be, and the person that I wanted to be for my children, the mother I wanted to be for my children. So I would say that was my defining moment as an adult, where I had to dig very, very deep and start over. And when I say I think about, when I was 8 years old and babysitting, I knew I had the power within me. I also have a very strong faith, knowing that the Lord wasn't going to drop me now. And I had to start from the beginning, and I had to figure out how can what is it that I can do after not working outside the home for 12 years? What is it that I can do that I can monetize, that I can make money? And the one thing I knew that I've always been good at is to be able to create order, to create order out of chaos. And what I mean by that is that I'm an extremely organized, focused person. I always have been. I'm very responsible. I'm a truth teller. And with all of the moving I've done, I thought that there might be an opportunity for me to lend my services to see if there was an opportunity in this industry. And, started off very slowly with an idea that grew organically.
Hold on to that thought for a moment before we go into that, and I want to come back to this because that's an
Sure.
interesting part of your story here. But I'd like to delve deeper into this question. Here you were living in uh, a a pretty cushy lifestyle,
For sure.
and and you came to the decision that you could not be your authentic self within that situation.
Right.
Um, what was it that was driving you to actually come to that decision? What in living in that kind of thing where you really essentially had everything materially that you needed? How did you find your way to that fact that this just isn't me and I just can't live my authentic life in this situation?
I think that no one makes the decision to disband their family lightly. And it was something that happened over time. Excuse me one sec. It was something that happened over time that I began realizing the circles in which I was moving and expected to move were not the, I was not engaged in the types of activities that made me feel connected to people, my community, my children. It was a lot of busy work. It was a lot of busy talk. It was a lot of surface rather than truly connecting, truly, yeah, it was the beautiful life. Everybody was beautiful. Not that people didn't have problems, you just didn't talk about them.
Mm-hmm.
And we did have some serious issues that we could not get past. And my choice was to live the way I was living or to take a chance, to listen to my instincts, which told me this is, if you look forward 20 years, this is not how I want to live. And it's definitely not how I want to raise my children. So it gave me the courage, even though I had no idea I was jumping off a cliff, psychologically, emotionally, financially, it gave me the courage to know that regardless of what happens, I will be okay because I trust me. And I trust me as the divining rod for my children in terms of what I want them to believe about themselves and think about the world and how I can create these empathetic, beautiful, generous, kind people that I'm going to send out into the world. So it was a decision that was not made overnight, but I didn't marry for money. I didn't stay for money. It's not who I am as a person, if that answers your question. But money's nice.
Yeah. It's kind of hard to live without it.
Yeah.
But yes, those those transition times in life are what really make us, and it's not easy, to make those kinds
No.
of decisions.
No.
And I'm certainly, you may not have realized that you were, as you stated, you were jumping off a cliff, but you had to have some idea that there could definitely be some financial concerns ahead, and
Absolutely.
all kinds
But it
of
was worth it. Meaning I,
yeah.
reviewed the cost benefit and, believed that it was the right thing to do at the time. And in retrospect, it still was the right thing. Because had I never made that decision, I wouldn't have been forced for financial reasons to start a business, which really was started on a wing and a prayer with no mentor, no money, no plan. I wasn't a business school graduate who had this perfect plan set out. I was just a good person who was hyper organized. And more than anything, I did what I said I was going to do, and I showed up and I did it well and built a business over a period of, 10, 12, 15 years by word of mouth, and have been very successful doing it in spite of myself, in spite of my lack of business acumen.
Well, tell us, how did you find your way into this niche? It's not a common niche to
Not at
be
all.
in. I mean, I could see you coming out of the situation you're in and going, "Oh, I could get a real estate license. I'm going to become a realtor." That's not an unusual path to go, but the direction you went into the real estate industry is quite unusual. So tell us how that all materialized and came about.
Well, I think it pardon me, I think it speaks to my inability to wait for anything. I'm not patient. I like immediate impact. I like immediate change. Someone asked me one time, God, you're so good. Why don't you be an interior designer? And I said, because I can't wait, 20 minutes, let alone 20 weeks for a sofa. That's just not who I am. I like to create solutions for people that are immediate. When you walk into a room and everything is all over the place and there's no sense of organization, somehow I am able to see in my mind, a path to organization and provide solutions for people. And that made me feel good personally because it was something I could control. There was so much outside of my life or so much outside of my control during these very dark years that work provided, this positive outlet for people to say, God, I just, I'm selling my house. I know I have to, pack. I know I have to get rid of so much. I know I have to stage it. Staging was, in its infancy 15 years ago. And when I first started staging, people in Washington, D.C. really didn't know this was not common, right? So I had to take the dog and pony show all over the place and explain to agents how this was going to not only help them to focus their time, in terms of getting more listings, but help them to focus their clients to provide a better transition for them. And after a couple of years, I thought, you know what? It's not just about staging. Staging is using props and furniture and, what you're putting into a house to highlight and showcase. What I realized is, boy, people are getting really tripped up on the entire transition. So it's not just, preparing to sell the house, but it's moving too. Moving sends people absolutely sideways. And it's one of the top 5 most stressful, life-changing events, along with death, divorce, illness, and loss of a job. And I began to look at this in a bigger picture, meaning what happens? We are said as Americans, USA Today says that we move as Americans 11.7 times over the course of our lifetime. Now, I've just completed my 13th move, but it's if you are not an organized person who thinks in terms of strategic solution, it can send you absolutely sideways to the point where people are so, overcome with anxiety and the overwhelm of understanding, where do I start? How do I do this? How do I make sure I'm not spending bad money? Meaning I'm throwing good money after bad. How do I make sure I'm keeping as much money in my pocket as possible? And I realized that I could make this part and parcel of the staging to look at the entire home transition to be even more solution oriented for people, to show them the way. And that's what it did. It evolved. And it's, obviously thousands of people have, decided that this process that I developed, the total home transition process, works for them. Because if this is not their industry, meaning real estate in general, moving in general, they just want a cheat sheet. What do I need to know to keep money in my pocket? How do I avoid the mistakes in both of these industries that most people make? So it makes me feel good. I'm constantly giving back. I'm constantly creating positiveness, positive transitions for people.
If you're just tuning into our show today, my guest today is Caroline Carter, the author of Smart Moves, How to Save Time and Money While Transitioning Your Home and Your Life. And Caroline certainly has had lots of experience with moving and transitioning, and she is taking those life experiences to make that transition smoother, less painful, and even productive for other people. And we're just now getting to know Caroline. So Caroline, let's go back to the startup. Startups are always difficult,
Hmm.
but I can't imagine really the difficulties that you must have had to go through, because you were essentially you were inventing an industry. You weren't just starting a business, but you were inventing a whole new kind of industry.
Hmm.
And you said you started off with staging, but it evolved from there. So what I'm interested in are the personal challenges that you as a person were facing as you were going through what I know had to be a very challenging startup period there.
I think the most difficult challenges were the physical and emotional challenges. I can't even speak about the financial challenges because while I did receive child support, I received no alimony.
Hmm.
Um, the child support was not enough to provide for a home in the community in which we lived. So I had a choice. I could pack up the kids and move them 40 minutes, north or west, where the school system might not be as good, or I could figure it out and believe that I will find a way, which sounds so silly. Now that I look back on it, who was I to even believe I could possibly do this? But I did. Um, I believed it would come if I focused. But I think physically and emotionally, I had three little kids, 4, 6, and 8, and it was a brutal change for them. And I was all of a sudden outside the home, even though I was working from my home. In those first 10 years, I was gone a lot. I missed a lot in order to provide them with a beautiful, stable home in a neighborhood in which they could walk to school. I still wanted them to have everything they would have had, not at the level that we were living, but I was responsible for providing their childhood experience. And to me, it was important to understand that responsibility and to do everything I possibly could to be both mother and father to these children. And so it required that I give up dating, for instance. Can't even remember the last time I had a date. But that's okay because it was a conscious choice I made. And it may sound crass, but I had two focuses over this last 15 years: making money, meaning monetizing this service that I was building, and taking care of my children, raising my children. That's it. My life has not allowed for, I don't want much fun. The enjoyment I've gotten out of my life has been seeing the impact that my focus on providing for my children and their time with me has given all of us is such a gift. And I knew I would never be able to get that time back. Financially, it's been a struggle. There's been some really great years and there have been some lean years. Unfortunately, I think my own perfectionism and a little bit of OCD, even though I built teams to service my clients, I always felt a responsibility to check in and be present on every project. So I've gotten burned out, to be honest. I've gotten physically and mentally burned out being responsible for the livelihoods of 25 people, still doing it by myself. I had no big corporation behind me, but I was lucky because the people that I hired 15 years ago are still with me today. So it was like a family. And when I had to work, this group of people, mainly Filipino women that I worked with, stepped in and helped me raise my children. Were there to cook dinner when I couldn't cook dinner. Were there to host play dates when I was out working or meeting with a client. So I am grateful for that. It was, but it was very humbling to know when I look back that, sure, there's a lot that I missed, not only in my own personal life, but in my kids' lives too.
Well, and as you have said before, as you look back on it, even though these were difficult decisions, they were the right decisions. and you have been able to live a much more authentic life. So talk to us about how it is do you actually find meaning in your life, and what brings you your greatest meaning in life?
That's a great question. I have found meaning over the last 15 years in the very simple things in life, in creating a beautiful home for my family, in reading a good book. I read books at least twice a week. I'm a huge reader because it's quiet time for me. It's also my personal time where I'm able to refresh and re-energize before I go to bed and calm down from the day. I love my early morning first cup of coffee at 4:30. For 15 years I woke up at 4:30. Now I'm up to 5:30. So that's an improvement. I would say my spiritual life has always been very rich and strong. This has not been a period that I have ever been without my spiritual life, because it has sustained me in so many ways when I couldn't see the road ahead and it looked like all icebergs. But I kept going because I knew that if I was not on the right track, I would be guided. The Lord would guide me, in terms of pivoting and, what I had to do next. It's a good meal. It's a Diet Coke with lemon. It's a walk. It's the sunshine. It's the beach. So it's very simple. Yes, I've taken some nice European and Caribbean vacations, but the real meaning comes from my relationship with my children and my extended family and good friends. It's been a very simple life, regardless of how I'm portrayed in the media or, on other podcasts. I'm a very simple person, but I'm happy with where I am. I've just recently relocated to Florida. This is yet a new chapter in the business of done in a day, where I am now going to be educating more sellers on a larger basis by, not only talking about the book, obviously Smart Moves, but I'm getting ready to release a class for consumers. It's called Smart Moves Masterclass. And it's where to start when you have made the decision to move, how to prepare your home to sell, exactly what to do. But unlike the book, it's really more hands-on. It's working with me. And it's going to be very exciting to take this journey with people during their sale and their move, where I can really be relating to so many more people than I am, just the people that I can, go visit. So this whole online world and online class is really, really exciting for me. So it's a new chapter.
Yeah, sounds like a real interesting new chapter. Well, can you tell us 3 good things from the last 24 hours in your life?
3 good things. Well, my 3 children who have been with me during COVID for 8 weeks left, and I spent 9 hours cleaning, organizing my own house. Now,
That does not sound like fun to me.
No, it's not fun, but you talk about a great, great sense of satisfaction and well-being. This is part of the level of perfection I have always brought to my clients that I practice myself, which is, there is clean as in tidy, and there is clean as in lick the floor clean. I am a lick the floor kind of person. So I would say a clean house is one thing. I would say I'm extremely grateful for my three children that drove from Florida back to Maryland over 2 days and made it there safely. And I'm grateful to be here today, to have the opportunity to speak with your community and you. So that's 3 things.
That's 3 wonderful good things. It's so easy for us to focus on the negative in life. And so I like to remind my guests that there are good things in our lives.
Absolutely.
And I like how you really simplified that. It isn't the big things; it's the little things that really matter in life. Once again, my guest today is Caroline Carter, author of Smart Moves: How to Save Time and Money While Transitioning Your Home and Your Life. Caroline, I have one more question before I go to that one last question. Tell our viewers and listeners how they can get in touch with you.
I would love your community to get in touch with me. You can find me at carolinecarter.com. You can email me at carolinecarter.com. I am on all the social media platforms. I'd love you to pick up a copy of Smart Moves. It's available on Amazon, and let me know what you think.
Wonderful. And Caroline, I just want to compliment you for being proactive and getting me your bio and your photo before the program. That was a first.
Really?
Yes.
Well, I am proactive.
So I appreciate that. I've actually decided to put that on my list of interview letters, is to just request all that information up front.
Well, I think it makes it easier for you on the back end.
Absolutely, yes. So I do appreciate that.
Sure.
My last question is, and I ask all my guests this, is when you come to the end of this life's journey, what do you want your epitaph to read?
Well, I know what it will read. It will read, "Here lies my mommy, she was always tired." I think what I wanted to read was my name, and just, she believed. And what I mean by that is, I believe anything in life is possible. I think it starts with a deep faith in yourself. And obviously, in my case, I'll say a deep faith in the Lord. But I also think that there are so many transitions in our lives that require a change of mindset from a negative to a positive mindset, that there's almost every situation I can think of where, if I'm able to reframe it, a negative situation, and I'm able to change my mindset, I'll find my way through the dark and difficult times, so that I understand now the roller coaster of life, the ebb and flow of life, the positive and negative, and really am very, very grateful for each and every day, not only for my own beautiful life, but for the way that I'm able to touch others with my unique insight and skills and abilities. And the interesting thing, Alan, is that had I never been divorced, I never would have been forced to figure out any of this. There would be no done in a day. There would be no home transition industry. So that is really gratifying to me. And anybody, pardon me, anybody who is struggling right now, and I know a lot of us are, there are 40 million people unemployed right now. I started with a belief that there was something unique about me, that a service, something I was good at, that someone else might be willing to pay for guidance, in this particular area. And I was right. So I would just urge your community to realize that there is a silver lining in every cloud. And I'm glad that I was open enough to continue, as many times as I've fallen, to continue to wake up each day and be grateful for all that I have.
It's been a pleasure being with you, Caroline.
Thank you, Alan.
And delighted to get to know you a tad bit better here. I look forward to future conversations.
Thank you.
And getting to know you even better.
Thank you for tuning in to Creekside Chats with successful multifamily real estate investors, brought to you by Steed Talker Capital. Steed Talker Capital works with both new and established investors nationwide, creating opportunities to flourish in all areas of life. As part of our efforts to make the world a better place, Steed Talker Capital contributes to activities and organizations committed to better understand the equine. These endeavors attempt to enhance the human treatment of horses worldwide. Steed Talker Capital, working for a world where all creatures great and small flourish abundantly. For resources to enhance your well-being through multifamily real estate investment, connect with us online at capital.steedtalker.com.